Yeah, hello, this is Dave from cheapbooks.com playing World of Tanks. This video is about how to play if you're the bottom tier in the matchmaking. Now, the matchmaking is a little bit different now because the bottom tier is a larger number of tanks. It could be 7 bottom tier tanks or 8 bottom tier tanks. But in the old matchmaking, there could be 14 top tier tanks and 1 bottom tier tank, which was you. So I'm going to explain the strategy that I came up with by playing bottom tier, because it works in the current matchmaking also. You might have an underpowered tank that is not only the bottom tier, but it's also the bottom for your own tier. So the way you do it, there's a couple of different strategies you can use, especially if you're a new player. One way to do it is if you really want to avoid the battle, and it's an encounter battle, or you can do it in a regular battle. Stay by the cap, but behind friendly lines, not in a dangerous position. Hide in a bush or hide behind a building, and try to cap. And what will happen is, once you see that your team is ahead, let's say, for example, it's 10 to 10. So there's a lot of tanks that are out of the game. Head for the cap and try to cap. You don't have any disadvantage by capping because of your tier. Higher tier doesn't cap faster. So that's one way you can be useful in a game if you are a weaker tank or a bottom tier, which is to try and cap. And like I said, it works better in encounter mode. So when I'm playing in a lower tier and I see somebody say, oh, I don't know what to do, how do I play? I tell them, find the enemy cap, stay behind friendly lines, wait until we're way ahead, and then go in and try to cap. A second method you can use is spotting and scouting. When you have a gun with penetration and damage, the higher the tier, the more penetration, the more the damage. But it's not true for spotting. It doesn't matter what tier you are. If you're tier 1 in a tier 10 battle and you spot 1,000 damage, you get 1,000 damage, regardless of what tier you're spotting, what tier your tank is that's doing the spotting. Now, it is true that the higher tiers tend to have a larger spotting range, but that's irrelevant. The amount of damage that you get for each tank that you spot is going to be the same no matter what your tier is. So if you're bottom tier, if you're a tier 8 in a tier 10 battle, try to do a spotting method. Obviously, it does help if you have coded optics, binocs, recon, situational awareness, etc. So spotting is mostly tier independent. Okay. So another strategy is you do a platoon with another vehicle that is somewhat vulnerable that could use you to watch your back. For example, if you're a Tiger and a tank like this, and you're in a battle where the tanks are a lot stronger than you, find a strong tank that might be a little bit slow and just ride along with him. And you watch his back, only take shots when it's safe. You're watching his back and he's watching your back. He's keeping you alive, because most of the enemy tanks are going to be fearful of the stronger tank that you're riding along with. So ride along with a powerful tank if you're a weaker tank. The other thing you can do is stay behind friendly lines and snipe. Get an idea of what the front line is, and always stay behind it. Move with your allies, but stay behind the front lines. Try to stay hidden in a bush. Be the last one. Don't be in front of your stronger allies. Be behind them. Another thing you can do is be on the map wherever you want, but make sure that the enemy is beyond your spotting range, which is 445 meters. If you have the circles for the spotting range on the mini-map, it's a white circle is your maximum 445 meter spotting range. If the enemy is beyond that and you shoot at them, they're not going to spot you. It's beyond their spotting range. So if you are a bottom tier tank in a higher tier game, keep the enemy within your yellow circle but beyond your white circle, and it will keep you alive. The other thing that you can do if you're a lower tier tank is do scouting. And scouting is different than spotting. Scouting means to locate the enemy, figure out where the enemy is going, not necessarily getting spotting damage. And for most maps, you have to scout throughout the game. You have to do the initial scouting, figure out where the enemy is, where they're going. After you get your initial shots in, they disappear, they become invisible, so you have to re-spot them. And they might have moved to a different position. So what you do is you keep on doing scouting runs. You find the enemy and then you run and hide, get behind a solid building, get behind a hill, and do it really fast so they don't have time enough to turn their guns to point at you. And don't peek out at the same location over and over again. Keep on picking a different position so that their guns are never anticipating where you're going to be. And you can do that till the end of the game. At the end of the game, if it's 3-on-3, you might not know where the three enemy tanks are. So your allies with the bigger guns, you say, you guys set up a sniping position, I'm going to go find the enemy. And that's one of the things you can do if you're bottom tier. So if you're bottom tier, there's actually one more thing I'll get to in a moment. If you're bottom tier, you can get huge amounts of experience. And the reason why is because you get more experience when you do damage or perhaps spotting damage, I don't know. But if you damage a higher tier tank or penetrate it, you get more EXP than if you do damage to a tank of the same tier or less. And one of the ways that I used to get tons of EXP, a tier 8 tank in a tier 10 battle, is I used to throw high explosive rounds at tanks like a mouse. And I was doing small amounts of damage, but I was knocking out the crew, knocking out the gun, doing damage to the ammo rack, etc. Small amounts of damage, but I was damaging modules on that tank. So I ended up getting number 1 for EXP. So if you're bottom tier, you don't have to try to get a lot of damage. Try to get a lot of EXP by spotting, by knocking out the modules. For example, tracking the enemy. You pop out, you hit your round at the track the enemy tank and leave it in a vulnerable position, and then let your allies shoot rounds at it, and then you're going to get assistant damage, which is very good. And you can actually do very well being bottom tier in the game. So don't give up if you're bottom tier. There are rewards with being bottom tier, and the rewards are that you can earn more EXP in a bottom tier tank if you're in a higher tier game, as long as you play it right. Okay, so that's a little bit of tips and advice for how to play in a bottom tier game. One of the others is, get your APCR rounds. You'll notice that I have a third AP, a third APCR, and a third HE rounds. If I'm bottom tier, I automatically load up my HE rounds. Not going to do as much damage. You're going to do about a third the damage as you normally do. But once you learn how to aim HE rounds at higher tier tanks, you're going to do some damage. And it does make a difference. Okay, so that's how to play bottom tier in World of Tanks. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.